This is the last part of Chapter 10. We're going to cover a couple of antibiotics and then talk about antifungals and antivirals. So we'll start with metronidazole. And metronidazole, we did touch on it in the GI tract drugs. This one is used a lot for this critter right here, which hopefully you recognize. That's Giardia. And we don't know exactly how metronidazole works, but it's thought to disrupt synthesis of DNA, and it's through a metabolite. And the metabolite needs low oxygen in order to be to get to that metabolite for the body to get to that. So this is an antimicrobial that is used in anaerobic situations. It's considered bactericidal. We use human forms because there is no approved veterinary form. So what we use it for, aside from Giardia, are a couple of other anaerobic type of infections. So entamoeba, trichomonas, balantidium, all of these are anaerobic or organisms that occur in anaerobic conditions. Metronidazole also tends to have an anti-inflammatory effect on the colon in particular. So it does have that property. So enteric, anaerobic bacteria, horses, dogs, and cats. It doesn't get metabolized quite as well as in cats, so we have to be really careful with the dosage with them. And then we also use them, the reason I have this contorting snake here is that we also use them in anaerobic infections in bird and reptilian species. So the big thing that you need to know about metronidazole, and I think I touched on it before, is that at higher doses, or if the animal's been on it for a while, it can cause neurological side effects. So an animal will develop a head tilt, kind of like this dog is showing, loses balance when the dog or cat tries to get up, nystagmus, which I don't know if you all remember what nystagmus is, but it's rapid movement of the eyes back and forth. It's as though the animal can't really focus on anything. And there will be little spasms of it. It won't be a constant thing going on. And with really high doses, we can get into tremors and seizures. And you want to catch it before then. Any loss of balance, anything unusual, you want to warn the owner to give us a call and bring the animal in. Once we stop the drug, then we usually don't see these neurological side effects. So I'm going to talk about chloramphenicol and fluorphenicol. So they're kind of related drugs, but they're very different in the way that we use them. So the mode of action for chloramphenicol, it disrupts protein synthesis by binding to ribosomes. And depending on the concentration at the site that we're trying to affect, it can be bacteriostatic or bactericidal. It is a broad spectrum antibiotic, and we don't use it as much as we used to because of some pretty bad side effects, but it is a desirable drug because of this broad spectrum that it has. So it's most effective against intracellular organisms, just like the tetracyclines, rickettsial organisms that go into the cells, and then also anaerobes. There is really good distribution, which is another reason why this drug was used a fair amount and is very desirable to be used, but we have to watch out for something that affects humans in it. So it gets into the prostate, globe of the eye, the central nervous system. It's just really good at suffusing throughout the body. But here's the really bad effect. It can interfere with cell mitochondrial function in the bone marrow, and it causes an idiosyncratic, so unpredictable effect of fatal aplastic anemia in humans. It doesn't seem to affect animals in this way, just humans, but we're the ones that have to administer it, so that's why this side effect isn't very desirable to take a chance on. So aplastic anemia basically means it destroys all of the cell lines being produced in the bone marrow. So this is why it's totally banned for being used in food animals. Any type of animals producing a food, so eggs, meat, and milk, in addition to meat animals. So in mammals, though, we can get some myelosuppression, and we can get some non-regenerative anemia, lymphopenia, neutropenia, but it doesn't cause the fatal aplastic anemia quite like it does in humans. So if we need to use it, and this drug fell out of favor, but it is now being reported as um, a possible treatment, especially if we don't have other drugs that cause the susceptibility of the bacteria. So sometimes we're kind of forced to use it. I don't want to sound like it's forced because with the proper precautions, it's okay. We want to obviously avoid skin contact. We don't want to be crushing tablets and that kind of thing. So typically you want to wear gloves. If you dispense this to an owner to administer, you're going to give them the gloves. You're not going to tell them go out and get them. You're just going to give them the gloves and give them the precautions about this. Because of this pretty substantial side effect, I certainly steered clear of it in practice, and um, that is just a very desirable thing to not use this drug unless you really need to. On the other hand, a drug that has a very similar name and is related to chloramphenicol, called fluorphenicol, is actually used a lot in certain cattle, in particular, in livestock. It is bacteriostatic. Um, there is an injectable solution. It has a broad spectrum of activity, and it has the same mode of action as chloramphenicol. So you can see in this ad for Nuflor, which is the trade name for fluorphenicol, it will have action against pneumonia, scours, which is basically diarrhea in young calves, new forest eye, joint ill, meningitis, lameness, a lot of things. So it's very desirable. And as I tell you how we administer it, that makes it pretty desirable too. So it's safe to use in cattle, certain cattle. We'll talk about that. It's used very much for bovine respiratory diseases such as Pasteurella hemolytica, Pasteurella multocida, Haemophilus somnus. And these are all diseases that occur, especially when we're shipping cattle, when we crowd them into cars together with not that much food and water, and we ship them to various areas and they encounter dust and cold and heat and all of that. So respiratory diseases are pretty easy to transmit between them. And foot rot, it's good for foot rot. So just like chloramphenicol, we get good penetration, distributes well in the body, and something that's very desirable about it is that we can use it IM, 2 injections, 48 hours apart, and there will be a 28-day withdrawal, so pretty long withdrawal time, but that's pretty easy to administer. And then if we use it sub-Q, we only need 1 injection, but that one has a longer withdrawal time. So because we don't know how this drug affects reproduction in animals, in cattle in particular, we don't want to use it in cattle of breeding age. So if you kind of read between the lines here, we're basically using this in calves. So calves that have been shipped off of dairies, calves that have been shipped from a range situation to a feedlot, let's say, but before they're of breeding age. So this is where this drug gets used the most. Rifampin. Rifampin has very just a few uses to it. So we use it primarily with an aminoglycoside, a beta-lactam, or drug or doxycycline when we're treating Rhodococcus equi pneumonia in foals. It also has been found to act synergistically with amphotericin B, which we're going to talk about soon. That is an antifungal drug. The mode of action for rifampin is suppressing RNA formation, and it is similar to quinolones in general in that action, and it only affects bacterial RNA, so we don't have to worry about it affecting mammals. The kind of interesting thing about rifampin is that it will give this orangish red color to basically all bodily fluids. So things like urine, tears, sweat, in the case of little foals, saliva, feces. So we need to tell the owners about that because that could be pretty disturbing if they think that the animal is bleeding from tears and from the eyes and from the nose and mouth even because it's going to color the saliva. It can also turn plasma red. So if we take blood samples from an animal that's on rifampin, it will look like the blood is hemolyzed, but it's actually not. It's just this color that gets imparted.